I feel like a big part of this is more about education, like me speaking to an elder on my journey of knowledge because I'm still trying to learn. And there's many people out there like myself who are also trying to learn. And so just putting that out there for people in the similar, you know, mind space. So I appreciate you for coming out. Um, you're probably one of the most knowledgeable people that I've come in contact with, and I'm humbled and feel great respect that you would come and have this conversation with me. I don't know if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself for those of you who don't know who you are.
Mia Hue, Nene to Sean Milanovich, Nehen Sekina, Nakukchashka Nahawa Cahuilla. Good afternoon. I'm Sean, and I come from the Agua Caliente reservation, and so I'm a citizen at Agua Caliente and citizen of the U.S. So we get that dual membership, which is cool.
Nice.
I have a family, and I'm a family man. I have my wife and I. We have 26 years married, May 30th. So that was cool, just a couple days ago. But we have 3 daughters, Jackie, Millie, and Gina, and we got 4 grandchildren. I just attended a men's wellness retreat up in the mountains, up in the San Jacinto Mountains, and it was incredible. It was really grounding. There was talks on wellness, talks on grief, how to take care of yourself. There was workshops on rattle making, drum making, singing. Nice. We had sweat lodges and bear dancers. It was really a healthy conference, and so it really was good for me because I mean it was over 3 days, but it's like that was the medicine that I needed for myself, so I can help others, and I just felt rejuvenated, re-energized, and so it was incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, that's amazing. You're an anthropologist, right? Is that where you got your doctorate in?
I got my degree in anthropology in 2007, and I stepped away from school for a few years, and then I went back when my dad passed away in 2012. And so I got my degree in my master's in public history, and then my doctorate in Native history.
And your daughter got a degree in Native history.
She got a degree in Native studies and cinema.
Nice.
Yeah, it was great. Before I came here, I just saw her pictures. She goes, "Dad, look at my pictures because they're sent to you, and we need to get them."
Pictures from the event?
Well, pictures just from her grad pictures.
Oh, yeah. My little sister just graduated high school. But your daughter just graduated college.
San Francisco State.
San Francisco State.
So nice. She was gone for 5 years to do that. It took her 5 years, but she got 2 bachelor degrees.
Well, congratulations to her. That's a big deal.
Yeah, that's a big deal. Kudos.
I had a lot of questions for you surrounding anthropology. Because I feel like there's a lot of debate as far as where natives came from. And I feel like we can speak to the source at least, or somewhat of a knowledgeable base of what is this? Where did we come from? A lot of our creation stories say we've always been here. I know at least for my tribe, our creation story is that we were a primitive man, always living where our village was up on the Klamath, and creator gods came down and they helped us go from a primitive man to a more civilized human version of ourselves, right? But everybody has a different story. There's the Turtle Island story. So what is the scientific version, at least?
Scientific version?
The anthropological. I learned this in school, and then I guess what would be your opinion?
Well, anthropology says we came over from the Bering Strait. That's what they teach you in college, but which was a complete opposite of what I was taught from my elders. Growing up, I mean, before I went to school, I learned, yeah, okay, American Indians crossed the Bering Strait, but that's not what really happened. And as Cahuilla, I mean, we have our own traditional story that we tell, but we were born right here. We were created right here, right where we're at right now.
That's what we say. So, and the Bering Strait, I've heard.
And I can talk more about that if you want.
Yeah, I've heard it's been disproved. I've heard since they found foots in the sand over, I think, near the Bay Area. Have you heard about that? That are 100,000 years old.
No.
And so that kind of disproves the Bering Strait narrative.
Over 100,000.
Yeah, because the Bering Strait wouldn't have been frozen over at that time. Because they say, I think that we came over something around 20,000 years ago. Is that what it is, or?
I've heard different numbers from different anthropologists, and I don't buy any of those numbers. I am sure people did come over. Yeah, I mean, people move around for sure. And if there was a time when it was frozen, the land was frozen, people could walk. People would move around. And I mean, we've seen the dugouts made out of the elephant tusk or the mammoth tusk, where they're made like a little kish, a small little house. And we've seen some of their cultural materials in those little huts, in those living spaces all along the way. And but I haven't heard that it's been disproved, and I just don't buy it that all the native people that are here that populate the United States cross that border. Maybe some did at some point in time, and I think there might be some stories to that, but no one really talks to the native people. Nobody talks to the native people about where they come from. And so we haven't had a voice in history, and just up until the last couple of years. So that's why it's so important what we're doing right here, to talk about those ideas, that cultural history.
It doesn't make sense to me that they would come from the Bering Strait, Russia, or Siberia, where they're trying to say our DNA is closely related to. And then that we somehow populated all the way down to South America. And it wouldn't make sense that we have the Mayan and the Aztec cultures down there that built these incredible civilizations, but also migrated down. So what's your kind of idea behind that?
Well, the migration is a big part of the Cahuilla have a migration story, as do a lot of people here in Southern California. But as we see it, when our creators had passed away, moved on, the people were distraught and they felt lost, and they didn't know what to do. And so they kind of just picked up and left this area right here. And they went on this epic migration around the world. And that's what they say, around the world, around their world, not I don't believe it's to actually go from here, let's say, over to China and come back. No, but we went in a circle, and we went south into Central America, the majority of the people. And then they started to come back up through New Mexico, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, and then they came back down the coast again.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so that's what they did. And some people, when, like the people that were in Central America, they continued to go down into South America. The people were curious, intelligent, and they wanted to know what Creator had made for them. And so they explored all parts of the earth.
Yeah, I saw that in your history. The Cahuillas say that you migrated from the north 5,000 years ago. That's part of your, at least Agua Caliente website from I read from your history.
So they say 5,000 years ago. I don't buy that. That's an early. What? It's not long. I mean, we've been. You go on the other part of their website, and they say we've been here since time immemorial. So what time immemorial is that? 5,000 years, or is that from the very beginning of time? But they don't have tribal people working for them, writing this history, and so even we have to educate our tribal members. We have to educate our tribal councils, and they don't. I mean, our tribal leaders, they know some things, but they don't know everything. And so
Yeah,
this is where we need to educate our tribal leaders.
I feel that. Yeah, a lot of these tribes, at least on the business side of the aspect,
Yeah, they're real savvy, right, with the business part, and
Yeah.
we've learned the language really well. We've learned how to negotiate. We've learned how to use law in our favor, but we still need to. So now we're circling back to in that circle to learn our language, to learn our songs, to learn our culture, including learning our history. And a lot of that had been lost. So when our country was invaded, when the Cahuilla lands were invaded first by the Spanish, later the Mexicans, and then later the Americans, we were put under great limits where we weren't allowed to travel. There was genocide across the land. People, if they saw you, they would just hunt you down. They would kill you. And so rather than, passing on these traditions, we were fighting for our lives, just fighting for survival. And so some of those families that did maintain those traditions, they stayed far away from the greater culture where the oppressor was at. And so they stayed away up in the mountains. And but those songs, those stories, those histories are being retold now.
From your history, first the Spanish came over, and I want to say I read it was somewhere around the 1500s. Is that when the Spanish came and built missions? They converted a lot of your people to Catholics, right?
In what was it? In 1776 is when they built that first mission. 1769 is when the first fathers, they decided that they were worried, the Spanish were worried about the Americans coming into California, coming into the Southwest. And so they said, okay, we need to take hold of our land in the north. So they left Mexico City. They went north with one father, Junipero Serra. And then
what was his name?
Junipero Serra. And then they're also, there were soldiers. And so they came to prophesize to convert the native people to build missions in California. And so there was, as we know, there was 21 missions. And but when the first villages that they came to down in the San Diego area, they killed the people. And then and on their deathbed they said, okay, if you if you take this Eucharist and you drink this wine, you're going to be saved. And that part, I completely disagree with. And they were being forced onto something at their death point, and they didn't understand. We had heard that there was people coming up from Mexico, that invaders were coming, but we weren't sure exactly what it was. But the missionaries, they brought disease, they took over the land, but what they brought was weapons. weapons, the technology that we did not have.
Mhm.
They brought guns and rifles, so and all the blades, and we didn't have that type of technology here.
The guy that you mentioned, his name was
The father,
he,
Junipero Serra,
he's the one that brought the missions all the way
he brought the
up
missions.
north to California, right?
Yes.
And he's the one that brought. So is your tribe still Catholic? Do a lot of people practice Catholicism?
We have a church that was built on our reservation in 1911.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a couple people that are Catholic, and I'm Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
I was
I know
baptized
a lot
Catholic, but there's not. There used to be more, but there's not a lot. I think there's a lot of backlash. I'll say against the church.
Yeah, the Native American church, right? So you guys, are you a part of the Native American church?
The Native American church?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's where you practice both Catholicism and traditional Native teachings, right? Or how exactly does that work?
Well, through the Native American church, there's different fractions of it, and so I don't think there's anything official or unofficial, but we have some circles here where we use the traditional methods, but we're not incorporating any of the church part of it. It's still so because that's using the
it's almost contradictive. I would
using
feel.
the medicine peyote. Yeah, that shining light. And so when in order to get it approved way back when, so they said, okay, we're going to incorporate this medicine along with some of the church teachings together, because there's a lot of similarities, and so that's how it was presented. But now there's it's like broken off from that, and it's all native.
Okay, so there's more. So factions. You'll say there would be some that are more traditional, more leaning towards the native aspect, and then all the way down to people leaning more to the Catholic aspect.
Yes.
Yeah, because I've seen where people are very heavily Catholic, but they'll still do dances, and then they'll do their dances at religious meetings, and then there's other people who believe that you should not be dancing, doing native dances when it has to do with the Catholic teachings. And so I feel like there's a lot of controversy surrounding the Native American church, because you got the people who hid within the Native American church under Catholicism to keep these teachings alive. And then you got now we're coming out of that age where it's safe to be native again, and people want to decolonize and get rid of the church. And so where are you on that side?
So you're bringing up a very, very good point, Dylan. So you have to look at God. Who is God? What is God? And I know for myself, I was thinking, okay, here's Sean, who is baptized Catholic. And then also went to there was another church. It was a community church in Palm Springs, like all through middle school and high school. But then, so you have that. And then you have your Cahuilla traditional beliefs. And then you have someone who goes to sweat lodge and who participates in sun dances. And then you have someone that's also following the half moon ceremonies, the teepee ceremonies. So where does God fit into all of this? And so when I was sun dancing, I said, God, just help me, help me understand, who you are in my place. And so what I heard, Creator just told me to just focus on my prayers, and it doesn't matter what different people call God. Just pray from your heart and be respectful and mindful. But I have come to the understanding that we all pray to the same God. It's the exact same. it's the same God. God came to different people around the world at different times since the very beginning when the earth was created.
Mhm.
And when God created, when he had all these different people around the world, he came to them. And according to their culture, their history, their geography, their topography, the geology, according to the plants and the mountains, all that had played a part in their history. And so God had different meanings, different names, and so it's
Different interpretations.
So Jesus is the same person who our Creator is, Umna, the greatness of all things.
Mm-hmm.
And but in the church, a lot of it's being taught by people from Western thinking. But if you listen to it, there's a lot of teachings where they're teaching about love, humility, and compassion. And that's what we're taught. We're also taught to take care of our families. We're taught to be warriors. We're taught to be strong. And always give of ourselves. And so if you were to look at all these teachings around the world, if you say look up, there are three basic things that they offer. They're all very similar. So it's my understanding, and I've only just come to this realization, not that I've heard it from anybody else. I've never heard anybody talk about it. None of our elders, and they always say it's somebody different. But for me, there's only one God, and so wherever I go, I pray that those people pray. But how I pray at home, I'll go to church with my wife on the weekends. That's where she feels comfortable, the Catholic Church. But then I also do our sweat lodges. I go to our other circles, and I pray that way. And my wife, she comes with me too. She helps me out, and we pray together.
Yeah, that's powerful. Me personally, I have a very similar understanding that I've come to. I also grew up in the church when I was younger, the Christian church, not the Catholic Church. But I feel like personally, God is everything. God is all. We're masculine and feminine energies, and everything. To be honest, because if you really think about it, there has to be something that has always existed. There has to be something that didn't just begin, it just always was. And in that sense, that's what I believe God is.
So for the Cahuilla, it started out, you had Amna, the greatness of all things, this masculine energy. And then there was Tukmiat, the night, this female energy. And those beings came together. They wanted to procreate. They wanted to create life. So those beings came together 3 times, and every time they came together, flashed all different colors of lights. But on that third time, that's when a seed was concocted, was generated, was formed, was created. And so that seed split into 2, and so then it was 2 brothers, Mukat and Temayawat, that they became the creators of life.
I also believe that everything has a spirit, from plants to humans to animals. Everything's alive.
Everything is alive. And we talk about that, how, creator, it's breathes energy. So when, 2 beings, the female and the male energies can come together, man and woman, and create life. That happened, but it's creator spirit, or not a spirit, but breathes that energy, breathes that life into that child.
So don't you think that it's almost a little bit, and and forgive me for if I'm overstepping my bounds on this question, but it's something that people I feel like truly think about when they're talking about the Native American church. And so I ask this: is a lot of people hold resentments against the Catholic Church. Um, I mean, they murdered women and children.
They murdered, they raped, terrorized villages, burned villages down,
and forced this new way of living down our throat in the guise that Native Americans are a savage culture. The narrative that they teach in school is that they saved us from ourselves. We were just over here booty scratching in underwear and fighting each other. That's the narrative they teach, even though for thousands of years before, hundreds of years at least before they came, we were doing successful brain surgery. People don't know about that. And so to know how much rich and loving culture that we had before, and then we were forced to change over to this because it wasn't safe to be who we truly are, there's that still that resentment. And then you see a Native American who is now practicing still Catholicism, who's now able to get in touch with their roots, and they know what their roots are. What would you say to someone with that kind of perspective who holds on to that resentment?
There's a lot of people that continue that resentment, and hold on to it deeply. And everything, they lost everything. Everything was taken from them. I can offer them prayer, and that if they need, they've been told, well, that narrative is wrong. And so I suggest that, they speak out about it, what actually did happen inside the missions. Number two, if they're going to pass on that trauma to the next generation, if they don't let it go. So they have to, how you get rid of that trauma? You have to talk about it. You have to bring it up and share about it. And you don't want to carry that hate, because it wasn't the actual church itself. It was people. People did it. People designed the church. So it's a human idea.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the people need to, they have to forgive, not to forget, but and forgive and to let it go. And that's not easy. Mm-hmm. And that can take generations.
Because this was not that long ago. Yeah.
Has to be retold and retold. There is not enough that's being done right now. There's not enough. There's no movies. There's nothing on media, hardly about it. Mm-hmm. And so until we change that narrative and let people actually know what happened, that's going to continue. And then that hurt, where there's depression, there's suicide, drug and alcohol addiction, incarceration, rape and murder. This is all going to be passed down from generation to the generation until someone in that generation says, you know what, I'm tired of it. I need to stop. What can I do to stop? And how you stop it? You start coming. You realize that something bad has happened, and you want to do something about it. And so you have to say, okay, mentally, verbally, hear it out loud yourself that you want to change. You want to stop it. So then you have to start practicing. Learn your language, learn your songs. The other part of it, going to sweat lodge, going to ceremonies, by practicing these traditional ways. That's what's part of it is those inner teachings on how to carry yourself as a human, being generous, being honorable, mindful. You're also going to learn how to forgive, and you're going to learn to that you can't just hold on to it. You have to let it go because it can hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
But this can take a lifetime, a couple lifetimes for a family.
And this was not that long. There's grandparents alive. Somebody's grandparent was in that church. Somebody's grandparent was the priest, and someone's grandparent was the native child there. This was not that long ago.
I have an aunt in she was born around 1905. She's a grandma, and she passed away a couple of years ago. But she had been raped by Father Han, and Father Han had started the Catholic Church in Palm Springs. But Father Han also was running the St. Boniface Indian School in the Banning area, and Father Han raped her repeatedly. And so she told me this when just before she passed away, and she had to let it go. She carried it with her entire life. She never told anybody, not even her daughter. But she told me in front of her daughter, and for her, she was able to let that go, and she could have a little bit of peace. And she had always talked about her time at boarding school, like things were just hunky dory, that there was never any problems, that there was always food, fresh vegetables that they had to slave over and go out and pick and gather and take care of. A lot of bad things happen at these institutions, and where the people just did not want to talk about it because it was too much for them. But those stories still exist today, and they need to come out. They festered inside each generation, and so slowly those are starting to come out. But the people do not know. And I mean, part of the story, I found it in the archives when I was going to school at Riverside, and it was in the Spanish mission records for in the Los Angeles area, and it had talked about how they took the head from the chief from that first village where the Spaniards came in and built their church, that they cut the chief's head off and put it on a pole to remind people that they were there now and that everyone had to listen to them, or this was going to happen to you. And so to find that in the church records, and the church has just denied anything like this ever happened. And I remember it was a couple years ago in 2000, 2011, we had the 100-year anniversary at Our Lady of Guadalupe in Palm Springs, and so we had this reconciliation, and I just went there with so much anger and hate, but I believed in prayer, and I know prayer works, and so I was talking about it, and then the father that was there, he had come up from Mexico, but he helped me work through it, and it wasn't the actual church itself; it's just the people that were in charge at that time. And so when this area was first being invaded, there was the authority. We had all the different tribal peoples here. That was the authority. But everyone else that came to invade the land, they, as you know, I mean, they disregarded the native authority. But because they had the weapons and they could shoot from a distance, they kept people back.
And that's the same thing that happened with Mexico as well. They came and they took your farmlands.
They took the farmlands. They took all the food. They took all the crops. They took all the animals. They took the women and made it their own. And they covered up our history. So even like if you look at Our Lady of Guadalupe, the who was Guadalupe and where did she come from? And there was Juan Diego, who's the Nahuatl,
Mm-hmm.
Indigenous man. He was a farmer, and he was looking for a place on the mountain. He was looking for peyote. That's what he was looking for. When all of a sudden, Tonantzin appeared, and she had this beautiful garments on, and so the church made that symbol, made this symbol with Tonantzin and Juan Diego. This was something from the Nahuatl people as something completely different, and so now Guadalupe is different, but that's an indigenous woman that we're seeing right there, and so the church is trying to cover it up and saying it does not recognize that, and so everything's a cover up. It seems like.
It seems that the Mexican teaching for California is that this was all Mexico, and there's no such thing as well, obviously there's no such thing as America.
What?
But
Okay, you said this was all Mexico. Okay, this was all Mexico for Mexico. Thought it was all Mexico for a little over 100 years. Okay, that was it. But it's always been our land. This is indigenous land. This is Cahuilla land. This has always been our land. It's okay. Mexico claimed it. The United States claimed it. Spain claimed it. But did any one of those people ever consult with the native people? No. So it's our land. So how can you just come onto someone's on a foreign land because you put a flag and say, okay, it's mine. I represent the Queen of England. I represent the King of Spain. I represent Mexico. No, it doesn't work like that. Mm-hmm. They completely disregarded the people that were already living here. They did not talk to them or consult with them. Okay, yeah, they shot them, they killed them, but that's not talking to them. And so I don't buy any of it. Mm-hmm. It's a threat on our sovereignty, and even sovereignty that's not even the right word, because we didn't have sovereignty. That's another word that was made up years ago. But we've always had authority and power over our lands. We are the caretakers of our land, of our world. And no one else is going to do that. Yeah, there might be people who come in here and take the trees, they take the water, they take the gold, they strip the land of everything till there's nothing left to bleed. Mm. And then they go onto somebody else's land and take it. That's the Western way of thinking. That's how the United States operates. That's how Europe.
Definitely it's a European conquering colonization culture that they extend to this day around the world. France is still doing it to this day in Africa, and they're speaking about going into Africa again and reclaiming what they've already conquered, because Africa is trying to push people out. And
people in Africa have to unite and come together. And so, like here, we all had our own different territories. Mm-hmm. And we were all independent of one another, but we would come together in a time of need. And so same thing over there. They have to come together in this time of need and push these people out. Otherwise, the same thing is going to happen to them, and like it's happening in other parts of the world.
Yeah, we didn't have tribes, at least where my culture comes from, the Yurok people. Yurok was only established in 1996. Before, we were Klamath River people. We had different villages along the river, and we were separate. We would just look at each other maybe across from the river, or trade amongst each other, and we would trade wives, and that's how we had different bloodlines is we would, when the woman come of age, she would go over to another village. We would have maybe a get together of all the villages, and then that's how you meet your significant other. But other than that, we were separate villages. We didn't have massive, we didn't have that drive in our blood to go take the next person's land or the next person's resources. We shared it and we cared for everything. So yeah, it does enrage you thinking about this. Of
Yes. I'd like to sing a song,
course.
and yes, I get angry. So this is a Cahuilla song, and but it's a prayer song.
That was beautiful.
That song, it's it means Amna, it's creator. Um, I'm here before you. Have pity on me. Help me. That's what that song is. It's a beautiful prayer song, and
So this is the kind of stuff that you'll see on your documentary, right? You filmed a documentary, and you interviewed elders, and you. When I say this is the kind of stuff, I mean specifically referring to your land and your culture and your teachings and
yes. I did a documentary this past year, to Haimanichi Palwanika. The water flows always. That's how we translate it in Cahuilla. And this is a film that talks about the fight for our water from the indigenous perspective between here and the Colorado River. And we talk with many elders and partners, but in the film we needed a storyline, and so the storyline is kind of based off of myself taking my daughter Gina across the land, taking her to visit these prayer sites, they're water sites, and we're offering up prayers and songs to these water bodies, and at the same time we're meeting relatives relatives in the physical sense and relatives in the spiritual sense. And so it's an absolutely incredible. And to see my daughter at the end of the 20-minute film, you just see her like she gets it. She gets it. It finally comes to her, that understanding of she had been out to these places her entire life as a kid, but now coming out as a young, educated, indigenous woman, she is just Thorpe, and she is just taking it all in, and she just feels ecstatic. She feels blessed, and I felt good. But it wasn't only myself. I mean, there was Michael Madrigal in there. There was Robert Presaclasa, and we had what's his name? Matthew Lavis. Matthew Lavis is an elder from the Chemehuevi reservation, and he really gave it to us, and he helped us out. And we did this film in conjunction with Nia Terrell, and they helped us put this film together. And we had received a grant. The Native American Land Conservancy received a grant from the Wayfinders Foundation, who helped work with indigenous groups around the world. But they gave us this grant to make for the NALC to make a film. So we wanted to talk about specifically about water, because we were in litigation for multiple years for out in the Mojave Desert. We're fighting for the water body there. And when Trump was president, he allowed this group, Cadiz, to come in and just try to suck up all the water from there. And so we took him to court. We said, you can't do that. You know, that water belongs to the people. It belongs to the animals. It belongs to the land. You just can't take that water and export it somewhere else. So we took the, what is it? It was Deborah Holland, the court. And we won that court case.
Nice.
And that came out afterwards. But Cadiz is still trying to take all that water out now and wants to give it to underrepresented cities, underrepresented communities. So, I mean, they've had a lot of backing behind them, a lot of money. So they're still fighting it. But we're still fighting it too.
It's wild that they want to come and build these ginormous cities out in the desert that are completely unsustainable by themselves, and they have to constantly divert water. They're even diverting water from the Klamath now up north.
So there's a diversion. I forget exactly where. So where all that water is coming from up north, because there just isn't one channel that takes all that water. The north does provide California with a lot of water. I want to say for the most part that all that water from up north, it gets dropped off somewhere just over by LA. But then this water here, I know Palm Springs gets a little bit of it, because right here at the Whitewater Canyon, there's a diversion right there. And so some of that water's, when people drive over the freeway, you can see all that white water just coming out. But lots of people are claiming that water. There's tribes and cities and counties, and there's even certain, it's first come, first serve. And so those groups that have been using that water since they first got here, they could still use it. So I'm talking about like the invaders. So those farmers that laid claim to some of those, they still have those rights, or some of those cities, they have rights. And I don't know exactly how that's working out, but tribes need to fight for their water. And when we made treaties with the United States in 1852, the United States Senate decided, when it went back to the Senate for final approval, decided that they were not going to approve any of those 18 treaties. And so then none of the tribes here were left with any land that was legally under the American dominant society theirs. And so colonizers, invaders kept settling on their land, pushing the native people away. But where we were at here, like out in the desert, people didn't want to come out to the desert because it was hot, it was remote, it was more populated by native people. And so we were one of the last areas where the invaders came in. And but everyone west of here was just stormed, and they lost a lot of land, a lot of people. But because of those treaties were not ratified, the people just came in and took all of our land away. They settled on all of our land. They claimed it. And because we were native people, we were not citizens of the US, we couldn't claim any of our lands at all. So it wasn't until 1876, under executive order, when the United States president, under President Grant, said, okay, we're going to establish these reservations here. And then it was a year later, President Hayes expanded those reservations into a larger acreage. But we still just got just pieces of our land.
And then I think the Dawes Act happened after that,
The
where
Dawes,
they split up all of America into like about 10-acre plots. And they said, these are the plots that are taken. These are the ones that are still available, and go settle them. And it didn't matter if those landed in the lines of the treaties. If it was on the chart, they could go settle it.
so with the Dawes Act, and so with the tribes, if they hadn't divvied out all the land that they were given, so then the Dawes Act allowed it, so made those lands become surplus, and so then they were sold, or they were given to outsiders.
Yeah, there's people still.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there's people that still own plots of land that were taken through the Dawes Act on where my tribe is.
Really?
Yeah, their ancestors. I mean, their lineage, their bloodline. We still own those plots of land there, and that's how a lot of our tribal lands got taken. And then there's a couple tribes up there. There's the Hoopa, there's the Karuk, there's the Yurok, and there's the Tolowa. We're all right there in the Northern California. And I got cousins that are Hoopa and Yurok, and family members that are Tolowa. The Tolowa's reservation is minuscule now at this point, to where it's just a tiny sliver of land right on the coast.
How big is it? Do you know?
I mean, I don't know, have the number off the top of my head, but I can tell you can walk the entire neighborhood in 10 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, well, that's just the housing part. Of course, you can walk down to the coast, and then that'll be like another 10-minute walk, and they have a small casino right there. But either way, it's all walkable within like a half an hour. That's how small that their land is right there. And a lot of those lands that were taken, they're farmlands, and they farm flowers that they send to Japan. It's not even anything that can be used by the community. And it's just kind of enraging to think about that as well.
Wow. So maybe they're making good money.
They make a lot of money selling those flowers because it's like the perfect conditions, and the Japanese, they use those culturally for, decoration. They use them in their own. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, how they use those flowers, but it's popular, and they spend a lot of money or buying them from Northern California. Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
A lot of those farms, they went under during COVID, though, because of the Embargo Act and that was going on, and there wasn't a lot of country-to-country trading. And so since their primary economy was Japan, that's where they bought the flowers from, they couldn't ship the flowers to Japan. So now they're kind of like going out of business at this moment. I guess everybody gets their karma somehow. But we'll see a lot of the natives up there, they don't have the money to be able to purchase those lands back. So we'll see. It's mostly lumber up there, and now there's not a lot of lumber jobs. The lumber industry is kind of dying. A lot of people working at the prison, but that's not as big anymore either. There aren't a lot of jobs up there.
Well, we've heard of land back, and maybe some of that will happen up there. as this happened in other places around the country, where land that had been used by institutions or by different governments is no longer needed, and so they'll donate it back to the tribe, to the tribal people, or to an organization of tribal people.
There's a little bit that happened when we formed the tribe. Basically, there was a lumber company that had came to the people, the villages, and they basically said, "Hey, look, we want to cut down some trees and for lumber to build houses and things of that nature." And the kindness of our hearts were like, "Okay, well, the trees aren't ours, so just where do you want to cut them down?" And they kind of tricked us in a sense where they said, "Well, can you mark on this map where we're allowed to cut the trees?"
Yes.
And so we said, "Okay, well, go ahead, cut in this area." We circle on the map. And then they used that as a contract to say that we gave them that land. And but we actually took them to court and ended up getting a huge settlement and getting a lot of that land back. So that's nice. But there's still lumber companies up there that own a large portion of land. So, yeah.
Interesting.
So it's all that sneaky backdoor stuff. And we just thinking, well, we don't own the land. What do you mean you're going to own the land and the sky and the river and the water? So doesn't make
How
sense.
many people do you have?
6,000 members.
What?
Yeah.
6,000 members?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And when was your tribe established?
96.
Okay. Wow. And where were you guys before? You were there, but just...
Yeah, we were there, just not federally recognized. And then...
How big is your land base?
It's just the Caliente River. So from the mouth of the river on down.
How long is that?
I don't know the exact... I know it takes 3 hours to drive.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's the bottom Wichipec, and it goes all the way up to the mouth of the Klamath, California, and it used to be larger, but it's now just pretty much the river. And yeah, but my grandfather is Karuk, so I'm Karuk and I'm Yurok. I'm Yurok on my grandmother's side and Karuk on my grandfather's side. And I have family members that mostly involved in politics within the tribe. So I have a cousin that's my age. He's currently a chairman he's not the chairman, but he's one of the chairs of the council for Karuk. My dad at one point was the northern chair for the Yurok. And he's talking about going for office again, so we'll see. But, yeah. Mostly headman is my lineage on the Aubrey side. You have some family members that work in politics too, right? I feel like I've seen Milanovich. There's a chairman currently at Agua, right?
My younger brother, Reed Milanovich, he's the chairman. So when Dad passed it in 2012, Reed he assumed that position. But before he got on, I think... Oh yeah, also before Reed, there was the vice chairman, Jeff Ruby. He became the chairman. He did that for a few years, and then my brother, he's been on there, I think.
Reed? How do you spell
2
that?
years? REID.
We have Reeds, and my family line is Aubrey, Reed, and McCovey. So that's funny. Maybe we're distant relatives. Maybe not, but that would be interesting to find out.
And then Dad, he was chairman for over 30 years. My dad, Richard Milanovich. And my grandmother, she was on the tribal council in the 50s. She was on there for like 10 years.
It's funny how that works. There's factions within the tribe that I feel like typically go towards the political side of things. And do you find in your tribe that there's a political struggle between certain families that are...
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, you want to make sure that the council's kind of got a representative of each family member, but it doesn't always work like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, everybody knows who all the families are. Or at least my generation does. And but now, because everybody's marrying outside, and so there's like more and more names, but everybody remembers who their family lineage is. And I think that's important.
Yeah.
To know that who your family is, where you come from. But I know we have tribal members that do not know what lineage they're from, what their moiety is, and whose house they were in. And so it's important to know that. And so as you decolonize, you're regaining you're searching out that history. And I think as you learn that history, you become somebody different, and you realize that you have a responsibility and you have measures that you have to deal with, and these responsibilities of taking care of other people and helping them, and that you all have to come together to work.
I feel like that responsibility finds you if it's in your spirit.
You think so?
Yeah, I don't think. Obviously, there are bloodlines, and some have been known to be headmen for generations and generations, and some maybe not. And but even within the family, for example, my family, the Aubrey family, we have 1,000 Aubreys within the family. Yeah, but between like the Reeds and the McCoveys, we're all blood related, and it's just a lot of us, and not everyone is meant to be a leader. I think that finds you if spirit calls upon you to do that. I didn't grow up on the tribe. I didn't on the tribal lands. I didn't grow up with any of my native family, and I grew up with my mom's side. My mom is Italian and Creole, and I didn't get raised with native culture. If anything, they almost tried to keep it from me. But I just found it, I could feel the river calling me, the river running through my veins. And I knew that I just needed to go and learn about my culture and connect with it. And a lot of natives, I feel like, can resonate with that, where they didn't grow up on tribal lands, they didn't grow up on the reservation, or they didn't grow up in the culture because maybe their parents lost their culture. But it doesn't make them any less native. It doesn't mean that they can't go and discover themselves and connect to that culture, because that's part of the healing, I feel like, for Native American people. And yeah.
How do you feel about blood degree, blood quantum?
I think it's very important at the end of the day. My dad's full native, and I do have 50% blood, and we have an issue. It's not an issue, but a lot of times what happens is, because for so long it was bad to be native, people would wash their blood out. They would purposely, instead of marrying native or marrying for love, they're going to go and find someone who they can now become more and more white and white showing, white skin. And so there's a lot of families up north where they're almost not. That wasn't the reasoning behind it. He went to high school with my mom, and they just connected, and they had a relationship together for a few years, many years. My older sister was born, and then I was born, and they were just young and they ran into their own issues. That happens. They had my sister, I think, at 20. And so when you start a young family, that can happen. It happens to a lot of people. Yeah. He ended up remarrying to someone from the Tallua up north and had my little brother. And he has the highest blood quantification of everyone registered to Tallua at this moment. He's the only person who has 100% native blood on the Tallua reservation at this moment, which is huge, because most people do, I feel like, end up marrying outside. And it's a little bit tougher up north, because everyone's related to everybody. So once you start getting into that, you start dating a native, and you find out that they're your cousin, and so that's hard. Yeah. Now you got to decide: is this my kissing cousin? No, I'm just kidding. It's not
Right?
Alabama. But yeah, I think it is important because I think it's important to incentivize natives to reconnect with ourselves and not feel like we necessarily need to look outside of our culture. Um, I mean, I believe in happiness and love, and if you fall in love with someone who's not native, then by all means, yeah. How do you feel about blood quantification?
I don't like it.
Mm.
I just see it like in my tribe, dividing families. Yeah, even in my own family, you can see it divide us apart. And so it's even allowed some people not to be enrolled as a member. And I just disagree with that. I believe that's their birthright.
It is tough when you're talking about a tribe who has developed a strong economic foundation to where now there's a benefit to be on the tribal role versus you're not doing it for some people. At that point, you don't know if someone's doing it for culture and for love and for family and connecting within themselves, or if they're doing it because they want to get that per capita. With the Yurok, there's not an incentive. There's no per capita, at least not yet. I would hope. I personally want to help develop that so that our tribal people can develop wealth for ourselves. But I don't know if Agua has a per capita, but I know one of the issues we're dealing with my fiance is she's Yaqui, but her father never got enrolled, and so we're trying to figure out how to get her on the tribal roll, and it's difficult. Some tribes make it very difficult. Not only do you have to do a blood quantification test or have someone on the tribal roll who's your parent already enrolled, now at this point you got to get sponsored by certain people to be able to get. I'm not going to go too deep into another tribe's regulations on how to get enrolled.
Yeah, I mean every tribe
But
is independent, and I don't like it. Say when the BIA comes in and says different things. I think it really should be up to the tribe, but I don't I don't like that part of it at all. Um, I just wish that wasn't did not exist at all.
it's tough when you think about the roots of the reason um, of why you need to be registered as a Native American, and and
We're not a dog. We're not a horse.
and that's how they used to keep track of us. That's how I have my family trees because we had to go to the Board of Land and Animals and request a crest records, and they would keep track of our family the same way they were keeping track of cattle. So you go to cattle, next page, okay, here are the Native Americans, and then all the way back to when the Board of Land and Animals first came to our village. That's the oldest name we have on there, which is my great 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 grandma Nellie, and she didn't even have a last name. We didn't
So
have last names.
no other people have to do that. No one else does it. I don't buy into that system at all. And so no matter if it's 20 generations and still that person hasn't married back into the native side, but let's say that I I don't know.
But at what point? At what
I
point?
think they have the right to practice to be a part of the tribe, and I've seen a lot of hurt and trauma just instilled by inflicted by the tribes onto its descendants from it.
There is a lot of racism tied to needing to register to a tribe or as a people. And, so I understand that aspect.
I don't think tribes should say who can or cannot be in a part of the tribe. If if they can show that proof that they were enrolled in that tribe, or well, that not enrolled, but you know, somewhere along the line, their grandfather, the grandmother, was a part of it, they should be allowed in. I don't think doing. I don't agree with DNA testing at all either. I don't.
I had to do a DNA test
I'm,
to get on my tribal, because I didn't register as a kid. If I was a baby, it would have been different. My sister didn't have to go through, but as an adult, I had to go get a paternity test and show I'm related to my father, who's tribally enrolled. Let me.
I wasn't enrolled like that. Well, I didn't have to do a DNA test. I think mine.
So what about the tribes?
So like that was in. I was 7 years old when Dad enrolled me, but for my daughter who's not enrolled, and for her to be recognized as a lineal descendant, we had to do DNA testing.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't.
We also had to provide a family tree. I had to give names. Like these are my
ancestors. You have to give names, and they got to do their background checks, and most of the time they already know, but they still need the
documentation
to make sure. I think it breaks up families. The what breaks up families is the DNA testing, because sometimes it could shed new light in things that could be true or maybe they're not true. But the blood quantum definitely breaks up families, tears them apart. I think it does more damage than good. This is something that as tribal people we never had before, so we should not be using.
Well, what do you say to the tribes? For example, we're here at Morongo, and they're Cahuilla, just like Agua, Caliente. I think their tribal. I'm not going to say how much they make per capita, but each member is getting a decent amount of money a month.
My uncle, who's from here, he just follows the blood quantum. He says that. That's
and so how do you decide? Well, I don't know if so. Since Cahuilla, you make up a bunch of rancherias and bands. It's all, but you're all one technically.
Yeah,
lineage.
Different.
You
bands,
can't cross
different families.
You can't cross register depending. How does that work? Say you belong to the Coyote band.
In 1954, when we adopted the tribal constitution, it was 76 years later after the reservation was established. We all had to come together, and when I say all, there was independent groups. You had your Achichem, you had your Piniktam, you had your Kawasiktam, Wanakiktam. So we all had to come together under one roof, under one authority, where there was, when I say one authority, there was going to be one spokesman for the tribe. So in 37, was it 38, under the Howard Wheeler Act, the Bureau of Indian Affairs said, okay, now we're going to go into a democratic society, and you have to change your government structure, and you have to get rid of your traditional structure of power, and you're going to have a tribal council now. Mm-hmm. And so you had to put all the people that were ahead off to the side and say, we're not going to go by this anymore. So it took, 75 years to get to that point. That's what, 3, maybe 4 generations? Mm-hmm. To get there, say, okay, we're not going to follow this traditional structure. We're going to follow this new body of structure. And so it's a process, though. It's a very big process. So you have these 4 groups under one head representing Agua Caliente. But now, since the 50s, 75 years later again, the people don't know who they are, where they come from. And so it's like, we're backtracking.
So I think this is a perfect time to wrap up. I apologize for the cameras kind of going out at the end there. I think we were having such an amazing conversation, and it came out really great. I wanted to say that I got this shirt, and this is the actual. This is the mountain line right here, and then this is supposed to be Cahuilla pattern from a artist who she's part of Morongo. Her name is Kimberly. This is her brand. It's called Loppy Living. And so I'm just wanted to. She hooked me up with it last minute. I hit her up yesterday because I was calling around trying to find Cahuilla shirt. One of my things that I want to do is wear patterns from each tribe of person that I'm interviewing. And so she was able to get me this overnight. I had it printed specifically for me. So I told her I'd shout her out. And, Loppy Living.
Loppy Living?
Yeah, here, I'll show it on the camera too. That's her brand right there.
I don't see anything on the back.
It's on the sleeve. Oh, okay. Loppy Living.
Okay.
Yep. And then this is the artwork.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad you said Morongo because there's a lot of because we're Southern California, but when I think of Cahuilla, most of the time I was trying to picture this whole time. What is that? Where is that from? So
this is the mountain line right here.
Morongo, because they've always had cattle here.
Mm-hmm. They're cowboys.
They had and horses. I mean, so does Agua Caliente to a point. But when I think of California Indians, I don't automatically just associate cattle and horses with the Cahuilla.
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm glad you said that. And that's more. We need more education there, just in that process. My grandpa was a cowboy. He used to run cattle up and down the mountain.
That's beautiful.
And but we just don't hear enough of these stories. And so that's nice.
So I wanted to thank you one more time. I appreciate you so much for coming out and doing this interview.
Thank you.
All right. That's the end.
We